It all began with a cupcake. That's right, a single, stupid cupcake with one of those little plastic candles that never light the first time. I was turning 38. Not a milestone, not a crisis age, just 38. We were in the backyard with a couple of friends, some lawn chairs, lukewarm beer, and a playlist that kept skipping because someone forgot to upgrade Spotify. Basic suburban birthday vibes. My wife, Natalie, handed me the cupcake with a crooked grin. "Make a wish," she said. I blew out the candle and thought, I wish things would stay exactly the way they are. And that's how I knew I jinxed it. Because 3 hours later, I'd find out that Natalie, my wife of 10 years, the woman who knew I alphabetized my spices and still stuck around, had been cheating on me. Not just a slip-up. A full-on, GPS trackable, calendar-synced, emotionally invested affair. The guy's name? Matt. You know the type, midlife crisis with a beard, calls himself an entrepreneur, but works from his garage selling vintage belt buckles on Etsy. I only found out because our mutual friend Claire got drunk on boxed wine and asked, "So, are you and Matt doing the whole open relationship thing now, or?" Open relationship? I choked on my beer. "Excuse me." Claire's eyes widened. "Oh my God. You didn't know." Then she did the thing people do when they realize they've just thrown a grenade into your living room. She started apologizing while slowly backing toward the snack table. It got real quiet after that. Natalie tried to laugh it off. "It was just a misunderstanding," she said. "Claire doesn't know what she's talking about." Yeah, sure. Except Claire knew the color of his bedsheets. Apparently, Natalie had been visiting a friend for yoga every Thursday night for the last 4 months. Spoiler alert, there was no yoga. Unless yoga is now slang for midlife crisis belt buckle dealer. What do you do when you're blindsided like that? I smiled through the rest of the party. Hugged people. Cut cake. Took pictures. You can actually see the exact moment my soul left my body if you zoom in on the group shot. But here's the thing. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I didn't smash anything. I took notes. Because if there's one thing I know how to do, it's pay attention. And if Natalie thought she could dismantle 10 years of marriage and walk away clean, she had another thing coming. I didn't say a word that night. Natalie fell asleep next to me like it was any other Thursday. Maybe she thought I'd swallowed the Claire's confused lie. Or maybe she thought I was too dull to connect the dots. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan like it held the answers to all of life's betrayals. She mumbled something in her sleep. I think it was Matt. Could have been Matt. Could have been mad. Honestly, at that point, same difference. The next morning, I made her coffee. Just like I had every morning for the past 10 years. Cream, no sugar, in that chipped mug from her college days with the faded Go Bears logo. She smiled when I handed it to her and said, "Thanks, babe." Like nothing had changed. I nodded. Of course. Like everything had. Now, I'm not the confrontational type. That's not weakness. That's strategy. You don't charge in waving your arms unless you want to lose the element of surprise. And I wasn't about to give up my only advantage. Instead, I started collecting. Phone records, for starters. I synced her cloud calendar to mine. Turns out yoga wasn't just every Thursday. It had spread. Tuesdays, too. Sometimes weekends. She was busier than the Pope during Easter. Then I found the receipts. Literally. A boutique hotel, 2 towns over. Dinner at that overpriced farm-to-table place she swore she hated. A random charge from a bookstore. I didn't know you could spend $87 on poetry. Who spends $87 on poetry? Apparently, Matt does. Because Natalie bought him a signed copy of something called The Softness Between Ruins. I almost laughed. Nothing says soulmate like overpriced sadness printed on recycled paper. Still, I didn't say a word. Instead, I scheduled a team-building weekend for work. Told Natalie I'd be gone Friday through Sunday. I packed a bag, kissed her on the forehead, and drove exactly 2.4 miles away to my buddy Derek's place. Derek, who works in IT and moonlights as a part-time chaos consultant. You want revenge with a paper trail? Derek's your guy. He took one look at me and said, "So, nuclear or psychological?" "Both," I said. "But no fireballs. I want her to feel it." He cracked his knuckles. "Say no more." And just like that, we started planning. Because when you find out your wife's been treating your marriage like a loyalty-free hotel buffet, you don't scream. You sharpen the knives. There's a special kind of silence that settles in when betrayal is no longer a suspicion but a certainty. It's not angry. It's not sad. It's clinical. Cold. The kind of silence a surgeon uses before making the first incision. Derek called it stage 0. The calm before you flip the board. Step 1. Get smarter than your pride. I wanted to confront Natalie, scream, demand an explanation, but that's exactly what she'd expect, and probably what she'd spin into a story for Matt. You know the type. Logan's losing it. He's paranoid. He needs therapy. I wasn't giving her that script. Instead, I set up a separate cloud backup for her phone. Took all of 5 minutes and 0 hacking. Just logged in while she was in the shower. Turns out trust gives you all the access you need. Every message, every calendar entry, every picture, mirrored to a folder named Yard Work on my desktop. Poetic, considering the kind of emotional weeds I was about to pull. Derek and I even used a burner phone to pose as a delivery service and text Matt, just to confirm the number. Hello? Your order from Couples Wellness Retreat is ready for pickup. The response. Thanks. We'll pick it up after seeing Nat tonight. Bingo. Friday morning came. I kissed Natalie goodbye at the door, still wearing my fake weekend work badge. She smiled like she was getting away with something. And in a way, she was. Until 8:37 p.m., when Derek texted me. They just checked in. Room 214. Crystal Pines Inn. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is where I burst in, kick the door down, and start quoting dramatic lines from revenge thrillers. Not even close. I stayed put. Because this wasn't about catching them in the act. It was about documenting the fallout. The hotel already had cameras. Derek pulled some strings. We got time-stamped footage of Natalie and Matt checking in, holding hands, laughing like they hadn't wrecked someone's life. We even got audio from the hallway. Nothing graphic. Just Natalie saying, "This is the only place I feel like myself." Wow. So brave. So deep. I poured a drink, sat on Derek's couch, and watched the clip again. This, I said, is going to age like wine. Because see, I wasn't just going to burn the bridge. I was going to sell the ashes. When you're betrayed, your first instinct is usually destruction. Smash a mirror. Scream into a pillow. Torch everything down to the wallpaper. But that's not how I operate. I believe in precision. If pain's going to be delivered, it should be delivered with posture. Grace. Like a waiter with a tray full of vengeance and a white napkin over his arm. So instead of rage, I poured a glass of red wine and stared at the footage from the Crystal Pines Inn. There they were, Natalie and Matt, walking through the automatic doors like they were checking in for a couple's retreat in a romantic comedy. She wore the coat I bought her last Christmas. He wore the confidence of a man who'd never had to answer for anything in his life. Derek leaned over my shoulder. You want me to edit this with some dramatic music? Not yet, I said. I want the raw footage. I want reality to sting. See, I wasn't just thinking about Natalie and Matt. I was thinking about our circle, friends, family, coworkers, everyone who had seen us smile through holidays, double dates, and social media filters. I wanted them to know the truth. No yelling, no accusations, just Exhibit A. But before I rolled out the slideshow from hell, I needed one more thing, insurance. I set up a meeting with a lawyer the following Monday. Meredith Duncan, sharp as a tack and the kind of woman who could gut a man with a well-placed clause in a prenup. I told her everything. Showed her the footage, the texts, even a copy of our joint account transactions that included a $620 spa treatment she claimed was a girl's day. Matt must be short for girl now. Meredith reviewed everything in silence, then looked up with a smirk. You've got enough here to file on grounds of adultery and come out looking like the Pope. Want the house? You'll probably get it. Want spousal support? You can decline it and still be a hero. I want the moral high ground, I said. And the living room TV. That thing's mine. Meredith chuckled. Classy vengeance. I like it. So while Natalie thought I was away at a company retreat doing trust falls and icebreakers, I was pulling levers she didn't even know existed. I had divorce papers drafted, property documents organized, and a press release. Okay, maybe just a carefully crafted email, ready to send to those who mattered. And then came Sunday night. I came home early, walked in like nothing had changed. The house was dark except for the hallway lamp, which she always left on for me. Part habit, part guilt. The smell of takeout hung in the air. Thai, her favorite, not mine. A wine glass sat in the sink. Lipstick stain, not the color she wore for me. Natalie came down the stairs in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, the costume of domestic comfort. She paused at the sight of me. You're home early, she said, blinking. Yeah, I replied. Weekend got cut short. She hesitated, then smiled, wobbly, like a Jenga tower about to fall. Well, welcome back. Want some leftovers? No, I said, setting my bag down. I'm good. We sat on the couch in silence for a few minutes. She tried small talk. I nodded, smiled when I had to. Pretended like I hadn't seen her feeding pad thai to her secret boyfriend 2 nights earlier. But eventually, she cracked. You're quiet, she said. Just tired. She bit her lip. Are we okay? And I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I looked at her. You ever think about who we were 10 years ago? She frowned. What do you mean? I mean back when you used to laugh with your whole face. When I could make you breakfast without it feeling like a routine. When we wanted the same things. She looked uncomfortable. Logan, I saw you, I said quietly. At the Crystal Pines Inn. Her face didn't fall. It collapsed. Like a dam breaking all at once. She started, but I held up a hand. Don't bother. I don't want the monologue. I'm not the audience for that anymore. She blinked, stunned silent for the first time in months. I met with a lawyer, I continued. We're filing tomorrow. I'm not angry. Not anymore. You wanted excitement? Congratulations. You got it. Natalie's mouth opened, but nothing came out. No denial. No tears. Just stunned silence as the reality set in. I don't hate you, I said. I just don't respect you. And without respect, there's nothing left to save. Then I stood, walked past her, and went to bed. That night, I slept like a man who had finally set down the weight he didn't realize he'd been carrying. She didn't come to bed. In the morning, I emailed the evidence to a select list. No captions. No drama. Just 2 attachments labeled truth. And just like that, the game changed. There's a peculiar kind of peace that comes after you've burned the bridge. Not the raging fire type. More like the quiet sizzle of a campfire as it dies out. That was me Monday morning, sipping coffee on the porch, watching the neighborhood joggers go by, as if the world hadn't shifted dramatically the night before. Natalie was still upstairs. Or hiding. Not sure which. I didn't care. My inbox, however, was alive. Responses to truth were rolling in. A few stunned replies. A couple of "I'm so sorry, man." And one from Matt's now former girlfriend. Yes, he was two-timing his way through this soap opera, simply titled, "Thank you. You're welcome, Madison. Enjoy the freedom." I had just finished my second cup of coffee when the front door opened. Natalie stepped out like she was walking into enemy territory. Which, to be fair, she was. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there in a baggy hoodie and slippers, the kind you buy in bulk at Costco. Eyes puffy. Hair in a bun that screamed emotional spiral. "Logan," she said softly. "Morning," I replied, calm as ever. She blinked. "You told people." "I told the truth," I corrected. "Didn't realize that was a crime." She sighed and sat on the steps next to me. I didn't move. Let the distance between us do the talking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. I turned, just enough to raise an eyebrow. "What part exactly? The secret affair? The hotel weekends? The lies? Help me out here." She winced. "It wasn't about him. It was about me." "Of course it was. I just felt lost," she whispered. "Like I was drowning in the routine. You were so steady, so predictable, and I didn't know how to tell you I needed more." "More?" I repeated. "You mean adventure? Spontaneity?" Matt's Etsy belt buckle business didn't exactly scream exciting future. She looked away. "I made a mistake. Mistake is forgetting an anniversary, not building a double life." Silence stretched between us, interrupted only by the chirp of a bird and a distant garbage truck. Natalie picked at her sleeve like a child caught cheating on a spelling test. "I just wish you'd talk to me," she said. "I did," I replied. "You just stopped listening." Her face crumpled, and for a second, I saw a glimpse of the woman I married. Not the one who lied and cheated, but the one who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen to 80s music and snort when she laughed too hard. That version of her was gone. "I want to fix this," she said, voice trembling. I nodded, then signed the papers. She looked up, stunned. "That's it? 10 years, and you're just done?" "No," I said. 10 years, and you were done. I'm just catching up." She didn't argue, just sat there, like someone waiting for a bus that wasn't coming. And eventually, she went back inside without another word. Later that day, the lawyer called. "She's agreed to everything," Meredith said, sounding slightly impressed. Didn't even flinch. "She flinched," I said. "She just waited until no one was looking." By the end of the week, it was official. The house was mine. The car hers. No alimony. No custody battle. There were no kids, just furniture and a decade's worth of shared memories collecting dust in the attic. I kept the couch. She took the guest towels. Fair trade. Word spread. Some friends dropped off the radar. Others came closer, like satellites pulled into new orbit. I even got a text from my old friend Marcus, guy I hadn't spoken to in years. Bro, heard what happened? Near this weekend? And just like that, the universe started tilting back into place. But the story wasn't over. Not quite. Because one night, a week after she moved out, I got a package. No return address. No note. Just a flash drive. I plugged it in, because apparently, I like living on the edge, and opened the folder inside. Photos. Hundreds of them. Screenshots. Messages. Videos. Matt. Not just with Natalie. With others. Turns out, Mr. Etsy was more of a hobbyist Casanova than anyone knew. And Natalie? Just one chapter in his leather-bound collection. There was even a video of him bragging at some party, drink in hand, laughing. Yeah, I got her wrapped around my finger. Married ones are the easiest. All desperate for attention. I sat back in my chair. Now that was fuel. So I sent one final email. Just one. To Natalie. No subject. No body text. Just an attachment labeled, "Your turn." She never replied. But I like to think she watched it. I like to think, for just a second, she felt the floor drop out from under her the way she dropped me. I closed the laptop, poured another drink, and stepped out onto the porch. The night air was cool, clean, free. And for the first time in months, I smiled. There's a strange kind of freedom in watching your life burn down. Not the painful, tragic kind they write sad songs about. No, this was different. It was almost cleansing. Like ripping off an old coat you didn't realize had been soaked in gasoline. The ashes of my marriage hadn't even cooled when the apologies started rolling in. Texts, voicemails, emails, from people who either knew, suspected, or were just late to the party and wanted to cover their bases. First came Claire. "I never meant for you to find out like that," she said, her voice tight with guilt. "I was drunk. I thought you already knew." "Funny," I said. "That's how a lot of crimes get confessed. Wine and pure judgment." She tried to explain, but I wasn't mad at her. In fact, she did me a favor. If it weren't for her offhand comment at that backyard birthday, I might still be sitting in ignorance, blowing out candles for a marriage already extinguished. Then came Paul. Ah yes, Paul. The friend who had once introduced Matt to Natalie at a work mixer. A networking opportunity, he'd called it. Guess he meant networking in the biblical sense. He showed up at my door with a six-pack and shame in his eyes. "Man, I didn't know it would get that serious. You introduced my wife to her affair partner, Paul," I said, leaning on the doorframe. "What were you hoping for? A casual betrayal?" He held up the beer. "Peace offering?" "Leave it on the mat," I said, and closed the door. Linda didn't bother apologizing. Probably too busy moderating her book club or sipping Chardonnay while pretending to feel bad. That was fine. Some people write themselves out of your story without ever realizing they were just a footnote. The biggest surprise, though, came from Matt. He texted me. "Just once. Didn't mean to hurt you, man. Natalie said things were already over. Hope you can move on." No punctuation. No remorse. Just that bland, performative sympathy some people spit out like stale gum. I didn't reply. What could I say that wouldn't require a baseball bat or a lecture on human decency? Instead, I saved his number as clown shoes and left it at that. But the real curveball? Natalie. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter. An actual letter. Handwritten. On paper. She said she was staying at her sister's place. That she'd been thinking about everything and had started therapy. She called our marriage a house with cracked foundations and said she was sorry for setting fire to it instead of fixing it. The letter ended with, "If you ever wanted to talk, not to fix things, just to understand, I'd be willing." Understand? That part made me laugh. I didn't need understanding. I needed clarity. And I already had it. In video files, time-stamped receipts, and the cold realization that the woman I once loved had slowly become a stranger wearing her skin. I tucked the letter into the back of my desk drawer. Not out of sentimentality, more like evidence. Proof that even after everything, she still thought words might patch a broken legacy. But here's the thing. I wasn't bitter. Okay, I was. But I wasn't stuck. Because something else had started happening quietly, steadily. People came back. Real ones. Old friends I hadn't heard from in years messaged me out of the blue. College buddies, coworkers, even my cousin Greg, who once disappeared to find himself and ended up selling kombucha out of a van in Oregon, called to say he was sorry. I heard what happened, he said. Sounds brutal. It's been educational, I replied. You need a getaway? And that's how I ended up booking a long weekend in Portland, crashing on a couch that smelled like patchouli and bad decisions, listening to Greg talk about chakras while I ate the best grilled cheese of my life from a food truck named The Melt Whisperer. Turns out, healing doesn't always come from therapy or journaling or finding yourself. Sometimes it comes from grilled cheese, foggy coastlines, and laughing until your ribs hurt. When I got back, I made one final move. I donated every last item Natalie left behind. Her shoes, her books, that framed quote in cursive font that said, "Live, laugh, love." She really didn't. And the mattress? Gone. Burned. Metaphorically. I actually sold it on Craigslist to a guy named Mitch who seemed overly excited about the discount. I bought a new one. Memory foam. No history. That night, I laid down in a bed that didn't remember betrayal. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up to silence. It had been 2 months since Natalie walked out, though walked might be a generous word. Vanished with a suitcase and half the good towels was more accurate. The silence in the house had changed since then. At first, it was loud, accusatory, echoing every word she'd ever whispered in the dark. But now, it was different. Calmer. Less courtroom, more cabin in the woods. Then one Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there she was. Natalie. She wore jeans and a sweater I vaguely remembered buying her one Christmas, though I couldn't recall if she'd actually liked it. She looked smaller. Not physically, just less inflated. Like the arrogance had deflated out of her posture. She smiled weakly. Hey. I raised an eyebrow. Did you forget a towel? I'm not here for anything, Logan. She shifted awkwardly. Can I come in? I thought about it for a second, then stepped aside. Not for her. For closure. We sat in the living room, the one she once insisted needed warmer energy. Now it was exactly my energy. Leather couch, bookshelf, a coffee table with 0 scented candles. She looked around like a guest in a museum. I like what you did with the place, she said, voice thin. Yeah, no throw pillows to trip over anymore. She nodded. I deserve that. No, I replied. You deserve honesty. Sarcasm's just the warm-up. She smiled sadly. I've been going to therapy, and I know no one wants to hear that from their ex. It sounds like a get-out-of-jail-free card, but it's not. I let her talk. I've been going through all of it. Why I did what I did. Why I let it get so far. And I know, I was trying to break something that was never broken in the first place. I leaned back. So you blew up a marriage because it was functional? She winced. Because I felt boring. And safe. And I didn't know how to ask for more without sounding ungrateful. I nodded slowly. And instead of talking, you chose betrayal. I know, she whispered. It's not fixable. I'm not here to ask for anything. I wanted to say it to your face. I'm sorry. For all of it. There was a pause. Long enough for her words to settle in like dust. Then I said, I believe you. She blinked. You do. I do. But belief and forgiveness aren't a package deal. I understand. And apology or not, we're still divorced. She nodded again, slowly. You look lighter. I am. I didn't know how heavy I'd made you feel, she said. That's the thing about weight, I said. The person adding it never feels it. She stood up then, pulling her coat tight around her. Well, she said, I'm glad you're okay. I just wanted you to know. I walked her to the door. Before she left, she turned. Do you think you'll ever date again? Eventually, I said. But right now, I'm dating peace. She smiled. A real one this time. She's a good one. Then she was gone. No drama. No shouting. Just a woman stepping off a stage after the final act. I sat back on the couch and exhaled. Not relief. Not regret. Just release. Later that evening, I poured a drink and looked at the box I hadn't opened in weeks, the one with our old photo albums, wedding cards, vacation souvenirs. I thought I'd throw them out. But I didn't. I labeled it, The Fire That Taught Me Light, and shoved it into the top of the closet. Not to forget. Just to remember how far I'd come. And that some lessons don't need to stay open to stay real. Because this wasn't a breakup story anymore. This was the beginning of the rebuild. Everyone talks about healing like it's a montage, soft music, gym selfies, maybe a new haircut. In reality, healing looks more like eating cereal at 2 a.m. in your boxers while watching reruns of a show you don't even like. It's staring at the wall for 20 minutes because it feels better than checking your phone. But I didn't need it to look pretty. I just needed it to be real. The first step? Reclaiming time. I picked up old hobbies I'd shelved during my marriage: woodworking, running, cooking things that didn't involve quinoa. I even rejoined the Thursday night trivia team at O'Malley's pub. Turns out, I'm still the reigning champion of obscure 90s sitcom facts. My house became a place I lived in again, not just passed through. I reorganized the garage, planted tomatoes, adopted a dog, a shaggy, stubborn mutt I named Winston because he looked like someone who'd fought a war and won. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ache dulled. Until one day, it didn't ache at all. It had been nearly 6 months since the divorce when I got the message. Not from Natalie. Not from Matt. From his ex, Madison, the one who'd sent me the anonymous flash drive. She messaged me on social media. Short. To the point. You ever want to trade war stories over coffee? I'm game. I stared at it for a while. Not because I was interested in revenge bonding or some anti-cheating support group, but because it was the first message in months that didn't feel like it came with an agenda. We met at a quiet cafe, the kind with mismatched mugs and too many plants. Madison was sharp. Direct. The kind of woman who asks a question, then actually listens to your answer. We didn't talk about Matt or Natalie. Not really. We talked about what it felt like to be lied to second-guess yourself, to rebuild with your own 2 hands after someone kicked over your foundation. We talked for 3 hours. I walked her to her car. She smiled. You seem better than I expected. You seem taller than I expected. She laughed. That's new. I didn't ask for her number. She didn't ask for mine. Some endings don't need a beginning attached. Some meetings are just acknowledgments that we're not alone in the wreckage. And sometimes, that's enough. Natalie always thought I was soft. Kind. Predictable. She mistook grace for weakness. Patience for passivity. But here's the thing about quiet men. We don't raise our voices, we build our exits. Brick by brick. Calm. Calculated. That was the real revenge. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't violent. It was a man who had every reason to break, and didn't. It was her waking up one day, realizing the world moved on without her. That she had chosen temporary sparks over long burning light. That I was no longer looking back. And Matt? He fizzled out. Of course he did. The guy was all starter fluid and no engine. Last I heard, he was working out of his mom's basement again. Natalie probably left him right around the time his ego deflated. I didn't celebrate it. I didn't need to. I had Winston. I had peace. And I had something they'd never get back. The quiet dignity of a man who took the worst day of his life and built something better from the ruins. No fire. No fists. Just closure. Real. Gritty. Quiet. And permanent.